In this video, I'm going to answer definitively, objectively, unequivocally, maybe, if Lord of the Flies should be taught in high school. And I'm going to do it with a pros and cons list. Then I'm going to reach a conclusion, but I'm only going to share that conclusion at the end of the video to make you watch to the very end of the video. Or you can just skip ahead. So you can do that if you want to. Let me apologize. In this video, I don't have my specs on, as they are referred to in the novel. And that is because the glare off of the lenses of the specs was quite extreme, almost enough to start a fire. But that's why I don't have my specs on. And I feel a little bit naked. I feel blind as a bat. I feel like a certain character in Lord of the Flies after his specs are stolen from him. The first pro of this list is that this is a very short book. It's a very easy to read book. It's very basic, I would say. And I don't mean that in a bad way. This is a vacation. This is a departure from harder readings. I mean, although it's a vacation on an island full of anarchy and boys that are trying to kill one another and all of that stuff. So it's not really a, pleasant vacation. Better than Disney World? Maybe, no, it's not better than Disney World. So I think that's a check mark in the pro column. Another check mark in the pro column is that it's a very thematically interesting book, and students are able to write interesting essays off of this book or regarding this book because of all of the metaphors and tropes and symbols in the book, which are blatant, they are obvious, but they're there. And being able to identify and write about these ideas in an essay, I think, is really empowering to a student because it allows them access into a discussion, into a discourse, and it allows them to view themselves as being a part of that discourse. And the last pro of the book is the iconic nature of the characters. Ralph and Jack and Piggy and Simon are so interesting and they're so memorable. You can't read this book and not remember the characters. You can't read this book and not have like a visceral reaction to the name Jack Meridew. Ooh, Meridew. You hear that and you're like, uh-oh. It spells trouble. A con of the book is that it's problematic in that it was written in the context of the British Empire, and there are these notes of British Empire throughout the novel. The idea that the boys are de-evolving or descending into a state of uncivilized savagery is very influenced by this idea that Britain is a world power and that inherently Britain is a more civilized and a superior society to the savages, quote unquote, or to the native individuals, that a lot of the stereotypes of the boys and what they become at the end of the novel are drawn from. Nowadays, we might view the depiction of the boys as being implicitly racist, drawing upon these stereotypes and these tropes of native individuals and tribes and tribal culture. Another con, I would say, is that because a lot of the moral lessons or themes of the novel are so obvious, you miss a lot of the more nuanced arguments. For instance, I think thinking of Ralph as a failed leader, as one who is so monomaniacal and has such a horrible state of tunnel vision that he isn't able to see how the boys on the island want to be entertained. They want to eat good food. Jack understands that. In a charismatic way, he's able to draw all of the boys over to his side because he promises that. He also uses fear as a tool. The externalized beast is a tool that he uses to control the other boys. And I think that's interesting. And I think a final con of the book is that the ending is deeply unsatisfying. It feels very Deus Ex Machina. It feels like it's very abrupt, very sudden. And you're left with a moral that is unmistakable because William Golding has led you there with little breadcrumbs, and now you're eating out of his hand and he's saying, this is the moral of the story. Ha ha ha. And so I want some ambiguity at the end of a book. I want different interpretations. I want the flexibility to say, yes, it's a commentary on this, but it also might be a commentary on that. And there's a little bit of flexibility there at the end of this book. But William Golding seems to want you to walk away from this book with a very clear view of human nature and a very clear moral that he wants to impart. And so my hackles get raised when an author seems to have a very clear agenda and wants you to read the book in a certain way, because I want to say, no, I'm not going to read the book in a certain way. I'm going to read it in my way. I'm going to be an individual. So to conclude, do I think Lord of the Flies should be read in high school? I'm going to say yes, question mark, because yeah, I think it can be profitably taught in high school. I think there are a number of drawbacks to it. However, I think it is a book that you remember, and if it is a memorable book, then it is a book with inherent value to a certain degree, right? Any book that you remember is a book that obviously is remarkable in some aspect, because you can still remark upon it. You still have stuff to say about it long after having read that book. That's all I have to say about Lord of the Flies. I'm not going to be like William Golding and say that you have to come away from this video with a definite viewpoint or a definite stance on whether or not you should read the book. Make up your own mind. Read it yourself. That being said, thanks for stopping by and watching this YouTube video. And I will see you probably soonish. Maybe.